the meeting after the invocation.
Thank you, Council, Mr. Mayor. So I was reading this morning in Psalms, and it says, Psalm 65, you care for the land and water it. You enrich it abundantly. The streams of God are filled with water to provide people with grain, for you have ordained it. You drench its furrows and level its ridges, and you soften it with showers and bless its crops. You crown the year with your bounty, and your carts overflow with abundance. God's intention and desire is for our land, our city to prosper, and our county to prosper, so that we prosper, so that our community prospers. He desires this because he's a good father and he loves his people. So let's pray. Father, we thank you for your grace and goodness. May your face continually shine upon us so that your ways may be known in our communities. We praise you, God, that all people may praise you, and that our land will yield its harvest, and you, Lord, will bless us. We give you our land, our homes, our labor, our city. Look with favor on our community and protect our citizens and leaders and enrich our land so that we may be a blessing to others. And we pray that you would be honored and lifted up in our community. Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I will call the meeting to order for the regular city council meeting, Lincoln Redevelopment Successor Agency, Lincoln Public Financing Authority for May 14, 2024. I have the roll call, please.
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Andriotta? Here. Councilmember Brown?
Here.
Councilmember Joyner?
Here.
Councilmember Lortzen?
Here.
And Mayor Carlskin.
Here. Next item on the agenda is a report for closed session. City Attorney,
Thank you, Mayor. There's no reportable action.
thank you. Surprise. I pledge of allegiance. I'd like to ask Marcus Leduco to please lead us. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Thank you, Marcus. Next item on the agenda is agenda modifications. Anybody on the council? Anybody on staff? Saying none, the agenda stands. Presentations. First presentation is a proclamation. Proclamation 2024-03. A proclamation of the City Council of the City of Lincoln declaring the week of May 19th through the 25th of this year as National Public Works Week. Whereas the American Public Works Association has deemed this year's National Public themed this year as National Public Week as Advancing the Quality of Life for All, and whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and the well-being of the city of Lincoln. And whereas these infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public work professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of the government and the private sector who are reasonable or responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, and solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and children of the city of Lincoln to gain knowledge and to maintain an ongoing interest and understanding of the importance of public works and the public works programs in our community. And whereas the year 2024 marks the 64th annual National Public Works Week, sponsored by the American Public Works Association. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the city of Lincoln do hereby designate the week of May 19th through the 25th as National Public Works Week. Urge all citizens to join representatives of the American Public Works Association and government agencies in activities, events, and ceremonies designed to pay tribute to our public works professionals, engineers, managers, and employees, and to recognize the substantial contributions they make to protecting our national health, safety, and quality of life. May I have a voice vote on approval of this
Oh, I move
proclamation?
approval of this proclamation.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimously passed and adopted on the 14th of May, 2024. A unanimous vote, a unanimous vote. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, and members of the public. It's a privilege tonight to be representing the Public Works family up here. And I am going to have numerous recognitions tonight as we are a family. And it's not just our Public Works Department, but this extends to our City Council who represents us they are very engaged and very committed group. And I do commend you, City Council, for that representation on the LISWA board. For the Titan Missile Site, which is related to water quality, the Sparta board, the RWA board. We have multiple representations, regional representations, and our council is very engaged at a high level, and I really appreciate that. It starts from the top with that recommendation. We couldn't be successful without the support of the City Council. Here at the city, we have City Manager's Office, which now is has a boost with some outreach support, which is a huge benefit to Public Works and community engagement. Our finance department was tremendous this year. We got a much needed, desperately needed utility rate study, which was also supported by the community. So we extend our appreciation. We know we have a fiduciary responsibility to the community to deliver with every one of those dollars efficiently to the community. We get tremendous support. Engineering department is responsible for delivering those CIPs, as well as the Community Development Department. They review the plans, all the facilities that Public Works will operate and maintain. They're the front line of defense, making sure all those developments are meet the community standards. We're a people business, Human Resource Department. They're huge. We're about half the city staff. We get tremendous support from our Human Resource Department. We're very happy with that internal customer service, and just all in all, there's a wide variety. IT is a huge component. We have the best IT support that I've ever had. We are pushing the limit. We are getting CityWorks right now. We're going to have first class GIS capabilities. We're going to make sure that every street is swept. We're going to have tracking on every service that we provide to ensure everyone's getting service. So with those mentions, we had a big year. Again, aggressive growth citywide. Community development is at the forefront of that with some support from CIP with the Capital Group. But we also had storms. We had power outages. You know, the CIP design with the redundant pumps and backup power generation is critical for us to deliver those services as we did through tremendous challenges and adversity. So with that, I did bring some of our staff here that we wanted to recognize tonight. And I'm just going to ask, we've got about 18 people. I know Gwen, she's not here, but she's here in spirit. She didn't want me to talk for too long. So I'm going to recognize their name, title, years of service, and just a note of, and then if I could just ask staff to either stand or raise your hand. And I'm starting with the least amount of years of service to the most. So Chris Nelson, Environmental Services Manager for Water and Admin. He has 1 year of service here at the city. He has 30 years of experience in the water industry and holds several high-level professional certifications in water. We have Simon, I might butcher your name, Erimonis? Hieronymus. Sorry about that. That's the first time I think I've pronounced your last name. Maintenance Worker 2, years of service. 2, recently acquired his State Water Resources Control Board Distribution Operator Grade 2 certificate. So that's an awesome achievement. We have Michelle Nelson, although I didn't see her earlier. Did she make it? She didn't make it. She's been a tremendous support. I know Nita and Paul mentioned maybe it was a mistake, but we submitted for some FEMA storm dollars, and it has been a lot of work doing the federal paperwork. So Michelle's been working on that, and it's just a huge amount of support, and she's also submitted for a recent grant that we're going to be awarded for a zero emissions vehicle. Mike Voorhees, Water Tech 2, 4 years of service, holds a distribution operator grade 2 certificate. Angela Frost, Environmental Services Manager, Solid Waste Street Stormwater, 9 years of service. She's currently enrolled in a Master's in Public Administration program. She just completed her first 2 of 12 classes towards earning her master's degree in Public Administration. Matthew Propes, Wastewater Systems Tech 1, 9 years of service, recently acquired his CWEA Collection Systems Maintenance Grade 2 certificate. Aaron Hookins, Utility Maintenance Supervisor, 10 years of service. He recently acquired the highest level of certification, the California Water Environment Association Collection Systems Maintenance Grade 4 certificate. And then not with us tonight, he was planning to join us. I don't think he made it. I think he had his daughter's softball game, but Travis Espinosa, Wastewater Systems Tech 2, 10 years of experience. He recently acquired his CWEA Collection Systems Maintenance Grade 3 certificate. And then with us tonight, Jason Duckworth, Administrative Analyst 2, 10 years of service. He is, I think it's next Wednesday, graduating from Lincoln Leadership Program, has conducted Excel training for city staff over at the library, which was very well appreciated by everyone that attended, written several software programs to support public works, modernization, and automation. Sam Ford, Utilities Maintenance Supervisor Water, 18 years of service, recently completed his first year as the supervisor, overseeing the daily operations of the water department. And then I'm not sure if Rich Spinelli made it tonight. I know I asked him to join us, but senior airport maintenance worker, he's our one full-time employee out at the airport, 19 years of service. He does, and why it's special, and we're working on getting him a backup, he holds a Class B driver's license with both tanker and hazmat endorsement, which he's the only staff member that we have that does that can actually drive the fuel truck around. We're working on getting a second one. Joe Caples, maintenance worker 2, 19 years at the city. He is with us tonight. I saw him earlier. He's planning to retire this year after 20 years of service with the city of Lincoln later in the fall. And then Phil Vance, senior refuse truck driver, 19 years of service also. He's also planning to retire this fall after 20 years of service to the city of Lincoln. Then we have Bruce Reed, refuse truck driver 2, 20 years experience. He's proudly continuing to serve the community of Lincoln. Matt Reynolds, wastewater tech 2, 21 years of service, proudly continuing to provide excellent customer service in wastewater. George Bishop, senior water tech, 23 years of service, recently obtained cross-connection control and backflow tester certifications. And I'd just like to mention that even with 23 years of experience, our staff are still continuing to improve and invest in their career growth, as well as the city is investing in our staff. Mike Osborne, and this one's really awesome, Public Services Supervisor in Fleet, 23 years of service. But he reaffirmed and passed the necessary exams for his National Institute for Automotive Excellence, Master Mobile Mechanic Technician, with 13 ASE designations, which I think might be all of them, and 51 ASE certifications in April for another 5 years. And each one of those 13 designations is basically a career field. So he's a master of masters, which is really impressive. And he's helping, we'll be bringing more staff reports on more vehicle purchases very soon, and they've been very well researched. And lastly, Scott Boynton, Maintenance Services Manager over Parks, Open Space Facilities, and Airport. He has 25 years of experience. He told me he's going to work another 25 years, so I'm really excited. I hope I can last that long. I don't know if I can, but I admire his dedication. And with that, again, probably took too much time, but
Not at all.
we really appreciate being here tonight and having the ability to serve with such an amazing team and such an amazing community. And it's really just an awesome place to work, and everyone's pulling in the same direction. We just have, just top to bottom, it's just a wonderful experience and everyone is part of the Public Works family here. I can definitely say that. So thank you very much. And then I think we're going to get a group photo, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Can we make a comment first?
And
So,
I just saw Chief Alves. I did forget to mention public safety. I totally apologize. But we were just in a meeting today. They're always looking out for traffic safety. And we're talking about the 4th of July parade and the fireworks show today. And they were well represented with 3 individuals there looking out for public safety. So thank you for that service as well.
I think before we take the picture, we
yeah, I
want
just,
to make some
we
comments.
want to make some comments, but we will definitely get a picture. So, I don't think that thank you can cover it. And the thought that I had while sitting here listening to you talk about all the staff is that, you know, everybody knows, and I said, we're gonna leverage the crud out of this, that Lincoln is ranked the 7th safest city in California, #1 in Northern California. And when people say that, they usually think of just police and fire, right? We're safe from crime, safe from whatever. But that is also attributed to Public Works in a big, big way. When people say we're the safest city, that means all of us. That's you guys keeping our roads clear and working and the water flowing and the garbage picked up and all of it, all of the things that you do. And the fact that you guys continue to, all of you men and women, continue to educate yourself and get further training and higher certificates, that just goes to show your dedication to the city. And you have no idea how much that means. So I want you to know that when we talk about being this ranked 7th safest city, like say that 10 times fast, #1 in Northern California, I'm just gonna stick with that, right? That means you too. That means all of you too. And I want you to be proud of that because we're proud of you and we're so grateful. Thank you.
I'll just real quickly jump on what Holly's already expressed. And all of us in this room know that the work you do is pretty much invisible to the general public. The only time they notice is when the toilet doesn't flush, or the water doesn't come out of the tap, or their garbage can gets missed. Other than that, you're virtually invisible to them. You're just moving about doing your work. For all of us here, we get a text at 1 o'clock in the morning that a 40-foot sinkhole has opened up. And some of you are out there having to deal with that in the middle of a storm. I don't think that we do a very good job of communicating how very grateful we are for that and how that helps us sleep at night, knowing that you're on the job. So thank you all so very much for what you do.
I don't know that I need any applause after what I say, but I want to echo everything that they have said. And to let you know, our appreciation continues to go in with doing everything we can to continue to provide more resources for you for the continued desire to train and more tools and more of the ability to make repairs so that it doesn't become a midnight 40-foot sinkhole, because we know how hard you guys really do work, and I can't say any more than what they have.
I echo everybody's comments. Matt has talked often about the group and the family idea, and that's true. I see a lot of you guys around town when I'm bumming around town, and everybody has a smile on their face. You realize you're sitting here as a family. Some of you 25 years old in the family, some 3 or 4 years old. That's certainly not like my extended family. You're all smiling. Nobody's arguing. You're not hitting one another. So it's more than a saying. I think it is a true feeling within the group. You guys hang together, and that's apparent certainly to me, I think as a parent, more people. So, thank you for everything you do.
I would like to mention one person that I forgot, as Paul referenced the sinkhole, is our city attorney's office. We get tremendous support and we had multiple engagements today. And Christine is certainly in code enforcement, who manages protecting our public utility easements and things like that that are very contentious sometimes. Those types of things we really appreciate, so thank you.
Okay, ready for a picture? Did you want?
Yes. That's okay. That's okay.
I looked.
That's okay, Deb.
yeah.
Not together.
Bye, guys. Okay. We'll continue on with the agenda. Next item on the agenda is public comment. This is time for public comment, or the time that the public can comment on items not on the agenda, but within our subject matter jurisdiction. I have one card to start out with. Ms. Whitney Epklund.
Hello, Council. I had a quick question. This is something that I've done a little bit of, I've had a couple conversations with some staff and did a little digging. And it's in regards to some residents in the new Bella Breeze neighborhood in the 12 Bridges area. Wondering when there will be pedestrian access from their neighborhood to the Leatherbees and Omakase and that retail center. I found out that it's most likely contingent on the development of that lot that is on the corner. And I was wondering if that could maybe be explained to the public how that works. And then also wondering, this just popped in my head yesterday when I was driving by, um, is it possible to, in the meantime, for a short-term solution, do we ever do anything like clear out and just make it down to the dirt so it's not actually pedestrian, like, it's not actually a pedestrian access, but it makes it so that it's a place where kids can walk without, walking through the weeds and running into snakes and that sort of thing? Or is that really expensive and is that a no-go? So just curious, that's all. Yeah, that's it.
So your question is walking access,
Or bikes.
the existing shoppers.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
So I think the question, and correct me if I'm wrong, Whitney, is actually broader than that. It's pedestrian access to undeveloped properties.
Yes.
Undeveloped properties.
Yeah. Like, if there would
We don't know,
be,
right?
yeah, do we have to wait to do anything until that's developed on our end? Or, I wasn't sure if it was like a financial thing or a legal thing where we are waiting.
Just real briefly, I would say that it's probably a combination of a lot of things.
All of the above.
All of the above. First of all, as a city, if we have not yet secured the rights for a public right-of-way for sidewalks on that area, we can't go in and clear areas for pedestrian walkways. Also, it raises a potential liability for the city to be encouraging individuals to walk across private property where it can be documented that the city actually created the access. So I would say those are the two that are first and foremost in my mind. But, I'm sure there's other engineering considerations as to how pedestrian traffic is directed and safety concerns from that angle as well.
The only other part that I'd add to that is, and this isn't a plug, but for any potential road measure that may or may not be on the ballot. But the reality is that for those areas that are not private property and we already have right of way, for example, there's a number of parcels along 12 Bridges where that's the case, where we already have right of way. We almost always would wait in most circumstances for the commercial property to develop because that's a requirement of their development that they must pay for those, standard sidewalks and ADA ramps, et cetera. But with that said, in older areas of town, like downtown is one example, and even areas that just haven't built out yet, many cities will identify, and we're doing that actually continuously right now in the downtown, depending on whether or not we end up with road dollars, where you'll do infill projects to sort of in advance of development even occurring, you'll just put in the sidewalks because you happen to know that a lot of your people use that or it's just really not safe. That money for us right now is extremely constrained. We have to use it for everything from potholes to resurfacing, so it doesn't spread that far. If a measure passes, one of the big components of the measure as proposed is pedestrian access and bike access, and so there will be competitive and I think even non-competitive dollars available for that kind of project, which would be awesome. So,
I think what I would add though is if you were to go in and put sidewalks into undeveloped land, once that develops, there's a very good chance that's going to be damaged severely.
Yep.
In that process.
It's easier to do in older areas of the community where everything's established and nothing's really going to build. That's not so difficult. But in like a 12 Bridges example, it's super likely that their driveway approach is going to cut through those and they'll have to reconstruct them. So to the extent that we would do that, we'd probably work with the property owner just to make sure that what we're doing is generally going to line up with what they want. But even so, you got to run water lines under those sidewalks, et cetera. So, yeah.
I would also just like to add that with that same kind of thing, even downtown Lincoln, like you said, there's a lot of places that even here it's already developed, it doesn't have sidewalks, and kids are walking to school. And so the concern is, whether they're going to this new, shopping center or not, or going to school, it's still, we know that it's an issue.
No members?
No
Anybody
hands
else?
are raised online.
Okay, I will close public comment. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. The consent agenda, all items are considered administrative and will be approved or disapproved by a single vote, unless a member of the council or a member of the public wishes to pull one for discussion. Anybody,
No, Mayor, none.
anyone in the public?
Move
Seeing none,
approval
I'll
of the
entertain-
entirety of the consent agenda.
I second.
Okay. All right.
have anyone online?
No, we don't. No hands are raised.
So I have a motion and a second. No
Mhm.
raised hands. Any please?
Perfect. Councilmember Joyner,
Yes.
Councilmember Andriotta,
Yes.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Lawrenson,
Yes.
and Mayor Carlskin.
Yes.
3/4 of the whole thing.
Next item on the agenda is public hearings. Agenda item 9A, conduct a public hearing and adopt resolution 2024-091, approving the annual adjustment of Placer Conservation Programs fiscal 24-25 development fees, and determine the proposed action is not a project pursuant to CEQA.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. Good evening. The item before you is an item that comes before you on an annual basis since the creation of the Placer County Conservation Program. This is the annual adjustment of the agency's development fees to utilize its streamlined environmental permitting program. This is the fourth inflation adjustment, which will bring the fees up to $2023. The 5-year assessment, which is required not only per the organizational documents, but also California law, will occur following the close of the 2024-2025 year. So at that point, you'll see a far more robust analysis of the fees and what they're being utilized on. But for now, we're looking at a land conversion fee representing a 3.44% inflationary adjustment upwards and a special habitat fee increase of 4.29%. The Placer County Conservation Board has already approved this adjustment, as has the County Board of Supervisors, the county board being our agency partner on the PCCP. And so all that remains is for the city as a member agency to approve this inflationary increase, which will become effective 60 days after the city's adoption. And so with that, I'm open to any questions, but otherwise I would ask the council to open the public hearing. And once that is closed, to adopt resolution 2024-91 regarding the PCCP's annual adjustment of its fees.
Are there any immediate questions by the council? In that case, I'll open the public hearing. Anyone from the public wish to make comments or testimony? Seeing none, I'll close public hearing.
No hands are raised online.
A little quick on the draw there, Mayor.
Okay, any further discussion by the council?
I don't have any questions about the fee raise, because that seems reasonable. I just, maybe you can answer this, or maybe you can, Christine. I'm just curious how this is working for us. Since we came into this agreement, I know it was a 20-year in the making. We had a big ceremony a couple years ago, and then I kind of didn't hear any more about it. Is it working well for us?
It Well, when we've used it, when the developer has
Right.
chosen to use it, it's been working very well.
Okay, good.
The plan itself is working better than expected because we had originally, in the original formation documents, the model showed the purchase of a lot of land required. We're not having to purchase it. We're getting perpetual easements on the land to use it for mitigation and to use it for habitat and so on. So we're able to hit our acreage much faster because it's cheaper to get and better all the way. An easement over working property that provides a natural habitat, salvages wild waterscapes, and still allows that land to be productive. And they've shown that grazing on the land is the best way to actually do the environmental stewardship. It's worked out really well. I haven't talked to a developer that is not very satisfied. The plan working faster and so on. The problem is it took so many years to get the plan in place that you couldn't wait on it like in Village 1. You know, because it wasn't approved. It wasn't approved. Village 5, even though the secret document, you know, it wasn't approved in time.
Right.
So, yeah, I went in, I got involved with trepidation, ready to really protect Lincoln, and it's exceeded my expectations for Lincoln and.
So the plan is protecting Lincoln. Okay, good. Do you have thoughts on that?
I've got two thoughts. Yes, the plan is protecting Lincoln, but also developers can choose not to participate in the plan and go the old route
Right.
if they wish to,
Gotcha.
which tends to be more timely and more costly.
Which is interesting because people are now paying a premium to get under the plan that weren't supposedly didn't want anything to do with the plan.
So I'm going to support this tonight, but I have a question, Dan. Given the unforeseen opportunities at purchasing mitigation easements rather than actually acquiring the land, is there any discussion of reducing the fee?
Well,
There should be.
well, there is. That's what the 5-year cycle is about, is to go back and revalidate the numbers more than just inflationary protection.
Right.
Which is how we've been running. They do validate to see that we're not so far out of bed. But
So the other thing that I did see.
however, remember that 70% of the land fee is long-term maintenance. It's not for the easement.
But if you haven't had to acquire land, you're not being responsible for the long-term easement. You've got a mitigation easement for which the rancher or the farmer continues to maintain the land.
No,
For the most part.
No,
Sure.
no, you're right. But you're putting habitat in, you're building habitat. That's what the money's
Or you're preserving it.
for. Or you're,
So the other question I have just real quickly, and I recognize I'm a little off of the item that's in front of us, is I had the opportunity to sit in for you at one of the PCCP meetings and was surprised to see discussions and even early actions to adding additional species to the list. And in this case, it was a horned frog that when I pressed them, nobody has ever seen before and could not validate that it even exists here. But the state wants us to do this. Is there any pushback on the legal side on some of this? Is PCCP prepared to fight certain regulations
Oh,
being
yeah.
considered?
And certainly, and certain developments we have. That, why would you fight against having to protect something that doesn't exist?
Because you're still having the expenditure and the monitoring for that creature that does not exist on the land. I give you fairy shrimp that do not exist in every single vernal pool, but because there isn't enough time, money, or staffing to go and check on every single vernal pool, we make the assumption that they are there.
Well,
Yes.
not when you get to acquiring land. You don't, you go out and you count every pool. Do.
So you're talking about it from the PCCP's perspective.
Yeah.
I'm talking about it from the developers or the property owner's perspective.
Well, from the biologist perspective, you know, we don't make assumptions. Too much money involved. This is it's another one of those boards that you sit on that you learn more about things that you really never ever cared and probably won't ever care about in the future. Anyway, no further comments. I'll entertain a motion. No comments on
No comments on line, no.
All right, I move approval.
I'll second.
a motion and a second. Please call
Perfect,
the roll.
thank you. Councilmember Andriotta?
Yes.
Councilmember Brown?
Yes.
Councilmember Joyner?
Yes.
Councilmember Lortson?
Yes.
And Mayor Carlskin.
Yes. Item 9B, another annual item that we have to go through. Our annual military equipment report.
State of California, safest in Northern California. Just want to get that thrown out there real quick.
So what was it again? 7th?
7?
Seven,
seven?
just, yeah, 7, less than 10, more than 5, but 7 safe, first in Northern California.
There you go. That's what I want to hear. There you go.
So it's time for our annual military equipment report and renewal of the ordinance 1045B. This is a legal-based hearing regarding the use of military-grade equipment. I'll provide a brief description of the legal code that we adhere to and to be considered. I'll provide some background, briefly go over the annual report, and be available for questions. Bear with me, some of this is some legal verbiage. Assembly Bill 481 was signed by Governor Newsom in 2021 and became effective January 1st of 22. The bill requires law enforcement agencies obtain approval from the agency's governing body prior to purchasing, raising funds for, or acquiring military-grade equipment and using military equipment, or collaborating with other law enforcement agencies in the deployment or use of military equipment within the governing body's territorial jurisdiction. Bill requires publication of the military equipment use procedure in the annual military equipment reports on the department's website. For the original adoption, the military equipment use procedure must be posted on the website for at least 30 days prior to any public meeting regarding military equipment. For the annual report, the bill states law enforcement agency shall also make annual military equipment report required by this section publicly available on its internet website for as long as the military equipment is available for use. Our report is posted on our website and is available. Per California Government Code 7071E1, the governing body shall review any ordinance that it has adopted pursuant to this section, approving the funding, acquisition, or use of military equipment at least annually, and subject to a vote on whether to renew the ordinance at a regular meeting, which is we are tonight. Additionally, the governing body shall determine, based on the annual military equipment report submitted, whether each type of military equipment identified in that report has complied with the standards for approval set forth in subdivision D. If the governing body determines that a type of military equipment identified in the annual military equipment report has not complied with the standards for approval set forth, the governing body shall either disapprove a renewal of the authorization for that type of equipment or require modifications to the equipment to be used. Last year, council approved ordinance 1045B. The ordinance approved the department's military equipment, addressing the type, quantity, capabilities, purposes, and authorized uses for each piece of military equipment, the fiscal impacts of the acquisition and use, and the legal and procedural rules governing their use, the training required by an officer allowed to use this equipment, the mechanisms in place to ensure policy compliance, and procedures by which the public may submit complaints. Finally, moving on to continue utilizing the military equipment, council must vote to renew ordinance 1045B after the following criteria have been met. A summary of how the military equipment was used and the purpose of its use, a summary of any complaints or concerns received concerning the military equipment, the results of any internal audits, any information about violations of the military equipment use policy, and any actions taken in response. Total annual cost for each type of military equipment, including acquisition, personnel training, transportation, maintenance, storage, and upgrades. The quantity possessed for each type of military equipment. If the law enforcement agency intends to procure more equipment in the next fiscal year. And then finally, hold at least one well-publicized and conveniently located community engagement meeting, 30-day, with announcement 30 days prior, bringing us here tonight. The term military equipment is a very, very broad term, and a vast majority of the military equipment that we possess, you could order tonight on Amazon. So there's not super secret stuff. We don't have things like MRAPs or Bearcats or other equipment that some of these larger agencies have. So with that, we have complied with these requirements, and we believe the findings would be to renew ordinance 1045B. And with that, I have nothing further. If you had any questions for me.
Yeah, I have a question. Is it true that often the military would come to you and say, hey, we've got this, Bearcat or this something or another, where you guys say, no, we don't want it, we don't have a use for it, or?
Yeah, yes, I've heard wives' tales of this, but typically that ends up with your larger agencies. If someone showed up today and said, hey, here's a Bearcat, we are not in a position to utilize and facilitate the use of that equipment where a larger agency probably could. And we did not have any use in 2023 of any military equipment, so we had no complaints. The only thing we did have was 74 drone flights. We utilized those for a variety of missing persons, wanted subjects, area checks for things. We get to, for example, if there's a burglary, we can use the drone to fly over the roof of the building to look and see for any access points. Examples like that. And that's all documented in the log. Our pilots are all currently licensed and up to date on their training with that military equipment.
Every year with bated breath, I wait for this to come up. I go through it, see if we finally got a nuclear sub for the ravine. Never happens.
Nope, not yet.
Quick question, just out of my own curiosity. You've actually got highlighted gas training on here, and the purchase date on those items was, if this is correct, 2002. What is the lifespan of?
Well, there's different chemicals have different lifespans. So it depends on what type of gas they are. I don't know the exact expiration dates off the top of my head, but there are, different expirations per type of chemical.
We're not using anything that's on its edge.
We're cycling those out. That is
It
the,
wasn't the yellow highlight signaling that they're out of use?
yes.
Yeah.
And we're disposing of through, I believe Placer EOD was going to facilitate the disposal.
Yeah. Yeah, no problem. Thank you. I have no questions.
Any- Anybody in the public have any questions?
It's a public hearing, Mayor.
You have to open the hearing.
Public hearing.
Oh, it still is, isn't it? I open the public hearing. Okay, nobody in the public,
No hands are
I'll make
raised
it.
online either.
nobody on. Close the public hearing. Did I hear a motion?
Yes. I move to approve or adopt Resolution 2024-9092, number 1045B.
Second.
I have a motion and a second, please.
Okay, perfect. Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Joyner,
Aye.
Councilmember Andriotta,
Yes.
Councilmember Lawson,
Yes.
and Mayor Carlskin.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Passed unanimously. Now we move on to general business. There's, looking at a resolution authorizing city manager to execute an agreement with Christina Company Athens LLC to sell 8.5 acre feet of volumetric storage, Lakeview Farms.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm going to spend just a minute or two to explain, I'm going to try to explain what Lakeview Farms is, and then I'll get to the request here in a minute. Without going into all of the sort of details, many years ago, there was a lawsuit that involved Sutter County, City of Lincoln, I believe Placer County, relating to flooding downstream. And the part of the settlement agreement was that Lincoln had to move forward with a solution of some type to mitigate the risk of flooding downstream. So the city at that time, and this goes back many, many years, developed this concept of a sort of almost a regional volumetric retention basin, which one of the things that I didn't even understand until I really understood the totality of the project is you might assume that this project is intended to actually pipe stormwater there, and that's not really the concept. The concept is to try, in heavy events, high flows, to have somewhere in the totality of the tributary system to hold that water. And Vin might help me with this. Travis explained this to me once, and I always get it wrong. There's two types of basins. There's retention and detention. And I think retention is the one that allows you to eventually release it at one time. And detention, you think about like detention, you never get out. Right. Percolates, yeah. But it does never go back out into the waterway. A project was scoped and generally designed for 3,200 acre feet of stormwater, which will help manage those major storm events. We now are in the 23 through 25 budget, we have collected and generally received enough revenue to build phase one of that. A lot of that is from drainage PFEs that are charged to development in Lincoln. And there have been a few small side deals that have been done going back a ways. One of the most significant of which is Bickford Ranch, which have put in a significant amount of money towards that project. So we are prepared as part of this budget cycle to begin construction on phase one. The reality, and I'll let Vin and or Travis speak to this more, beyond phase one, we will eventually need to build phases 2 and 3, but just the phase one component satisfies a significant amount of our need now and for the foreseeable future. Phase 2 will add more that gets us further along, and then there's a final 400 acre feet that is part of phase 3. Phase 2 and 3 are different, more expensive projects. Phase 1 gets us sort of up to speed and then accounts for a lot of the growth that we have going on right now. The next phase is primarily funded through Village 1 and I believe 7 for the most part. And then subsequent phases, everybody pays a little bit into the drainage fund, which then funds the remaining. Now, that being the case, oh, and in case you're wondering where this is, if you go north of town a ways, there's a place called Raccoon Creek. That's where it's located. So if you're ever driving that way, that's where it is. Since that time, there's a lot of history to this request. In fact, my understanding is that the land that is now under city ownership, where this improvement is going to be built, was originally actually sold from the one of the gentlemen that's making the request for this. And I I can't place an exact date on it, but probably about a year into my tenure year, I met with the project proponent and we had a discussion. And this is during a different time when we were trying to figure out how we were going to make Lakeview Farms work, about the possibility of selling some of that excess capacity for a project that the proponent has in the county. And the project they have is south of Lincoln. I'm not going to have the exact location, but it's set on close to a industrial boulevard going south, Athens. And it's a storage and hobbyist storage project. And so the request at the time was, hey, is there interest from the city in entertaining an out-of-area, essentially, service that would allow him to buy the capacity, which would satisfy some of his storm requirements of his project. At the time, we were still putting together the finances of how we were going to actually make phase one work. For a variety of reasons, I would assume project readiness, those discussions sort of ceased for a while. In the midst of all of this, council may recall that we received a fairly significant request that we sought direction from council on. I think it was roughly 6 to 8 months ago, from Placer One, for a very similar request, larger numbers, larger area. And council at that time said, we're not sure that we're interested in that. And I mentioned to you during that time that aside from Bickford, we had one other outstanding request that had not been ruled on by council, and then we would get it back to you. So we're back. The request, to be very clear, is for 8.5 acre feet of volumetric credits in the Lakeview Retention Farm Basin. That fee is $293,000 and change, plus a one-time payment of $143,000 and change for perpetual maintenance, which is proportionally what we typically charge, especially if it's outside of our city limits. There has to be a capital part of it, and then how do we keep this thing maintained moving forward? And so that's what's been proposed by the Christina Company. Separate of this, I'll just mention that we had discussions because we're starting to get a lot of outside of area service requests, not so much for stormwater, but a lot for water and sewer right now. And Lincoln kind of has a spotty history of when they have entertained those requests and when they haven't. And so at some future meeting, once this matter is decided, we do want to bring a policy discussion to council about how you'd like to manage those, because they're going to increase, I think, over time as the city continues to grow and your infrastructure lines are adjacent to county areas. People will naturally ask if they can pay to get in. And that's a complex discussion that I think we need to have on a standalone night. So that's sort of the totality of the request. Vin, did you want to add anything about the project or anything else I just missed before questions?
Yes, but thank you for the very thorough background, Sean. You know, Travis and I try to prepare for this. Travis as our former city engineer, and I believe the items proponent, Mr. Smith, is also here today. So, if he has anything to add to the item, you know, I ask him to come up to the podium. But the gist of it is that Lakeview Farms is the predominant or the primary improvement of our, you know, storm drainage impact fee program. It's the singular project that's paid for by the PFE. Council should be aware that You know, at this point in time, we are sufficiently funded to build phase one of the project. And then as additional development occurs, we will move on to phase two. So with the improvements constructed with phase one and two, our expectation is that meets the needs of the city. 2,800 acre feet is what we estimate is the city, is needed by the city. The 400 additional acre feet is sort of a buffer, right? Just in case things change, because it's never precise when it comes to planning, right? Now, that being said, the 8.5 acre feet that's being requested by the item proponent is 0.3% of 2,800 acre feet. But every capacity, every bit of capacity we sell or we, that increases with development, it takes us to the next threshold. So I think that sums it up. And then Travis is here to help answer questions, if you have any. And Mr. Smith, do you want to come up and add anything?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Marcus Loduca on behalf of Christina Companies Athens. Don't know if you wanted to have discussion first and then open the hearing or hear from me right now. Thank you for the time tonight to be able to come before you on this request. I know that when such a request comes before the council for a project outside of the city, there's always a concern about setting a precedent. And then others are going to come in and say, well, you did it for them and why not for me? And so you've had other requests and there were concerns that such a case, especially if there were very large projects that might have competing uses. The project before you is, as Sean mentioned, hobby condos and indoor and outdoor RV and boat storage. It is not competitive with either existing commercial uses or planned and approved commercial uses in villages 1, 7, and 5. Or in other commercial centers in the city. Or frankly, for uses that are existing or might take place at the airport. Those are substantial assets and infrastructure and investments from both the private sector and the city that you do not want to see projects outside the county competing with. So you certainly would be concerned about setting a precedent in that case. I think here you don't have that precedent, just because one, it's a very small request, and two, it's uses that just aren't going to be anywhere else. It's the first hobby condos project, we believe, in the region. Again, for car enthusiasts, people bring their nice cars and they have a place where they can show them to their friends and hang out all day, and they have TV in their hobby condo and that kind of thing, and watch races. And it's, again, it's very popular elsewhere in the United States. It's just blown up throughout the Southeast. And the South, and so you're starting to see those projects starting to pop up in the Western United States. And then RV and boat storage, most self-storage, I represent a lot of self-storage companies, they don't have the room for that. People have RVs, and it wasn't just during COVID, but there's a great amount of RVs and boats that people have in this area, and your CC&Rs typically will not let you park them in and around your house. And so people have to drive miles and miles away to be able to find a place, typically out of county, to be able to park their RV or boat. So again, these are not competing uses. I think that would be the concern. This is, as staff just mentioned, not only the almost $300,000 for infrastructure for construction costs, but also the long-term maintenance and operation costs where you're getting the money up front. It's not going to be paid out over a lot of years. You can get that money up front to invest at that time that you need that for phase 2 of Lakeview Farms. So we do believe that that concern that you would rightfully have over a precedent setting and competing uses would not be here. And it's a very small project. And we would ask tonight for your approval of the agreement as presented. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
You go to me first, okay? Um, So Marcus, probably both you and Christine can answer this one. We had a earlier brief conversation about changes in the Surplus Land Act. Are we considering this surplus capacity? And will it be affected by the Surplus Land Act? Do we need to go out and offer it to something broader?
My understanding is this would not be covered by the Surplus Land Act. That's more for the lease or sale of dirt property, buildings and such that the city owns, not service capacity of wastewater, sewer, that type of thing.
So even though there's construction involved, that something is being built.
There's construction involved of water, sewer,
Yeah.
all of that. So that I do not personally believe that it would be covered under the Surplus Land Act, but I'll let
Just
my
exploring
esteemed
it.
colleague chime in if he,
It's probably more like a fee for service.
it is.
Right.
Well, and it's not just that. Typically in the Surplus Lands Act, whether it's parkland or other surplus lands, the city makes a declaration that has no further use for it for public use. The Lakeview Farms has a very definite use. And so this is really, as Sean just mentioned, a fee for a portion of the infrastructure credits, but it is not something where the city's saying, we no longer have any use for this site. That would trigger it, but that is not Lakeview Farms. It is a regional retention basin that people pay fees for example, as the attorney just mentioned, sewer hookups or water hookups, you're paying for capacity that's been created on a larger project.
Okay. So I've got questions that I have to ask, Marcus. Of
course.
My sense of it is, and correct me if I'm wrong, the fee plus the one-time payment for perpetual maintenance, that pretty much just covers our cost, correct? So what is the benefit then to the ratepayers and the citizens of Lincoln of entering into an agreement like this?
Well, objectively, if they're being charged the proportionate rate that we would charge this project if it were to be in city limits, the answer would be nothing. Separately, I suppose there's an argument that could be made that even Vin teed it up perfectly. This is, what did you say, Vin? 1/3 of 1%? Is that what you said?
Yeah, 0.3%.
So it's a very minor impact to the actual system. From a financial perspective, the best I can come up with to be reasonable is that, of course, when you do a project, unanticipated things come up, change orders, something's more expensive than you thought it was going to be when you originally developed. And so there isn't a downside in the sense of having a little bit of extra in what is a multi-million dollar project in case something happens. But outside of that, I'll have to kind of defer to the project applicant.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, as several of you know, I was intimately involved with 4 of the villages in the city for quite a number of years. And so one of the things when staff first sized this, went out, did all the engineering, the 2,800 acre feet plus the 400 acre foot buffer, assumed build out of all the villages. The one thing you don't want to do when you get in a project of this magnitude is fall short. Because at some point you're short, whether it's O&M costs, money's coming in, or actual construction costs, where you're having to go out and cover a lot of those costs yourself or borrow. One of your villages, half of it is in a conservation easement in perpetuity. So Village 4 will never build out, as we originally drew lines on a map and made assumptions. Out of a 2560 section, 1,260 acres are in conservation easement. And you have riparian area there and a bunch of ranchettes. So that village, which was assumed in these numbers for the 2,800 acre feet, may have 400 acres of development. So if you assumed all that area was going to develop and it was going to be paying its fees for retention, you suddenly end up short. So this is, again, just putting some money that you'll be able to use for phase two. But, and I'm not saying open the floodgates, no pun intended, and start selling credits to everyone. But in this case, it's, as Sean just mentioned, a very small amount. And it's helping to make up what might be a deficit at the end.
So Marcus, you and I, full disclosure, talked a little bit on the phone about this, and I think we're both in agreement that if the council is to agree to this tonight, there needs to be very clear language moving forward and statements from the council about this not being precedent setting. As we look at Placer One in particular, but other projects that could potentially come down the road, that could all be competing very directly with our ability to provide sales tax revenue, to provide services to our community. We need to make it very, very clear that we will not support anything that is going to harm our community moving forward. So however the council decides on this one tonight.
I agree with that. We need to have that discussion. Okay.
I agree, but I want it said
But
tonight
Annika-
as well.
Pardon me?
I want it said tonight as well. If we move forward with this, if we choose to support this, that this is a one-off. And we're going to have to establish a policy moving forward.
We don't have a policy yet.
We have a practice.
We have several practices. We don't have a practice either. My point is, what you're addressing, I agree with. We need a robust discussion because it's more than Lakeview Farm. There's a lot of other regional
Right.
capacity that we could or could not have. I mean, we could generate or not generate. So
Yeah,
we need to talk about that.
Mayor, if I could just, I just want to clarify one thing. So the reason why I chose to agendize this, even though you had been pretty clear in the Placer One discussion, is there is this component that we don't talk a lot about at city council meetings, but it has to do with sort of at least commitments to raise an issue to city council that happened maybe even a long time ago, and honoring those regardless of discussions that have occurred in the interim term. And so we felt responsible for minimally giving the opportunity for the applicant to make their, pitch to the city council in this matter. But you're totally right, because moving forward, I don't think that you really want us quarterbacking what might make sense or not make sense. It just would be cleaner and probably more fair for all parties involved if the policy just says, here, we're not doing it, or we will do it, but in very specific circumstances, or however you decide to have that discussion. And we, if possible, scheduling allows, we intend to have that discussion this month.
And I tend to feel like I would want to support this mostly because of what Sean had just said about honoring our commitments and, even if it was other council or other people that had talked about whatever they were going to do back then, it can be incredibly frustrating to all of a sudden have a whole new set of faces to try to come up and say, well, I had this agreement and whether you did or didn't, and then end up having, and I don't mean to ramble on, but as far as, I agree with you 100%, Paul, that we need to have a policy set out on this, and that we need to, it's not good practice to allow this kind of thing to continue to go.
The interesting thing is, as Marcus just said, Village 4, part of our build out, ain't gonna happen, or it certainly isn't going to happen the way it was. Building Placer One, it conceptually didn't exist at the same kind of time frame. You know, I mean, yeah, Roseville may have extended the whole Placer One thing, happened in the last 10 years. This project was before that. I think,
Saying this project was to be used for growth in that area?
no, I'm saying that the original intent of this project is the model has changed. Okay? And I'm not saying that Placer One should be at all, should be part of the model. It's just the recognition that the sizing of it and everything else is no longer, the underpinnings are different. The capacity, what do we really need? Well, we have capacity so much. We need a different amount than we originally thought. Because I also wonder about technology, okay, and water reuse and injection. It may change the whole stormwater thing, you know, before this is ever a completed project. And I want those discussions as part of the policy setting. I don't want it simply based on the fact that we're going to lose some sales tax here. I think it's a broader, more global problem. Having nothing, we're so far off of Christina, 8 acre feet. But it's good to force this kind of.
Yes, I agree. So I guess I would have one more question. Ben, you and Sean, you as well suggested there may have been, however long ago, a previous agreement. If there is, I want to honor that.
I can't speak to that aside from, I met Mr. Smith a little bit into my time here, and there may have been, I'm sure there was, discussions preceding me, especially since he owned the land originally. But when we sat down to talk, it was pretty simple. It was, here's what we're looking for. Here is, I think maybe even we calculated how much roughly that would be in order to buy in. And that was prior to any discussions about anybody else. And then all these other things materialized since then. So unless, I don't know, Marcus, if there was anything more in the history book that I'm not sharing accurately.
Yeah, the only thing I can add to that is, I mean, this agreement goes back a bit. I worked on this several years ago. It came out of as the project was processing with the county, you know, stormwater issues came up, and the county was saying, you know, if you don't mitigate on site, which basically would take a big chunk of the site out, and have the fact that you have a, you know, conservation bank adjacent to you, and that it could not go forward. And so we started looking at what options there might be out there. And again, this was several years ago. And talked to staff, and at that point, Lakeview Farms did not have Village 1 and Village 7 going forward and being able to cover the cost of Phase 1. And so there was, I think, a real willingness to try to look at getting some funds in to be able to help make that happen, so that as opposed to basically almost duplicative retention on a site that didn't make a whole lot of sense, that instead get some funds into the program. It would not be a lot, so there would not be a significant impact, as staff mentioned, 0.3% of the overall city amount of 2,800 acre feet. And so that was really where this came from several years ago. I hadn't been involved with this for a while, and then this came up again, and it was like, frankly, I had forgot about it. I thought it had already been approved. So when I got the call from Mr. Smith, it was like, Oh, okay, that's finally coming up for a vote. I thought it had, but that's where it came from a number of years ago.
Well, if I understand it correctly, I did speak with Mr. Smith, that he really kind of spearheaded, because of the issue with the Sutter County and the pressure, he was very engaged with the city manager and those involved to come up with a solution, right? And he owned some of the land that he was just hey, why don't we, let's do it this way, and presented it to him, and they started to run with it. He ended up getting ill, and they ended up doing some things that I don't know were specifically ethical, the way that they went about doing them. I don't want to go into any of the details. That's not for me to share. But in the end, you know, him spearheading it and then having them kind of do what they did. And if he would like to share that, that's up to him. But I just felt that it was, and I'm pretty sure, Paul, you've had other experiences of your own where you may not have been dealt very fairly with.
Okay. We have been dealt with fairly by the city. I can tell you that at all times on this. We worked on the agreement and to be able to come forward with this. And it's, you know, everyone's been straight shooters. It's just a matter of time has passed. And now this is the last piece for this project to move forward in the entitlement phase. Quite literally, everything else, all the other studies are done and everything. It's just waiting to determine from County Engineering and Surveying Division how you're dealing with this issue, because you can't even write an environmental document. They won't even start it without knowing that this issue's been resolved, because otherwise it becomes a very different environmental document if you have an unmitigated impact on retention and a different site plan. And we literally go back to square one. And I've been working on this for 5 years. So you can imagine, and it went on for a number of years before that. It's been a long haul.
I think if I try to reach into the bag and find a positive here for the city of Lincoln, it's that we have an ongoing problem at the airport with our hangars being used as hobbyist hangars that may or may not have an aircraft in them. If there were to be a project such as this, that we could say, you have an alternative. You need to head down there, or
Well, I
I'm
don't,
looking for a positive.
I don't disagree with you, but they need to be moving out anyway. I know you are. No, I hear you. Mayor, why don't you go out for public comment real quick, and then we'll come back and, if you want, and then we'll
First round.
finish our comments that way.
Okay, this is not a public hearing. Any public comment? Any
No
public
hands are
comment
raised.
on
Okay, that's easy.
Okay, we'll close public.
So, I think to what Councilmember Brown was alluding to, when Sean first started explaining this to me, and I'll have to be really honest with you, this whole thing is super confusing, and I'm like, I don't understand how, you know, water retention way out here affects a project way out here. You know, it just seems really weird to me. However, I do understand the history, and I appreciate Marcus saying the city has treated them well, but I do know that in years past, the way things were handled may not have been, you know, the way we would like it now. And so originally, you know, I wasn't really in favor of this because we said no to Placer One, because we don't want to open the door. But after, you know, investigating and listening to all of this and getting some more clarity, I kind of think that this journey that we've been on, Paul and Dan, of cleaning up old stuff, you know, I think this might fall under that. So a positive would be that there was maybe not something so ethical that happened a few years ago. The gentleman owned the land, you know, the city kind of bought it from him when he wasn't well. I don't know all the details. I don't know, maybe the positive is that we're, you know, because it is a small request, that it's doable. So maybe we can put it in the bucket of, you know, we're cleaning up something from the past, maybe, I don't know. So I'm kind of more leaning towards supporting it than I was before. But I don't know, what do you think about that? Do you have any thoughts to that? Because this one's a hard one.
Yeah,
This is difficult.
So, because you're asking me.
Yeah, no, I am
It-
asking you.
I don't, I've got two ways of working here. One is trying to be an honest broker, trying to do the
Mhm,
right thing.
mhm.
The other is when I hear statements of potential, unethical is the term you're using.
Shenanigans, that's a good word.
Shenanigans,
Yeah,
in the past, I kind of want to see it. Show me.
yeah.
How do I know? I mean, am I aware of things that, to my perception, were done long ago and far away? Yeah, I am.
Mhm.
But for me to hang my hat
Right.
on a decision here tonight,
Mhm.
that we're basically charging the exact cost of building it and maintaining it. So it's a push.
Yeah.
There's no benefit, there's no harm. So I think what you're saying is the benefit is goodwill.
Yep.
To a past partner.
Yeah.
In this process.
Yes. And I think you said that well, a benefit to goodwill to a past partner that along the way kind of got shoved to the side, maybe. I don't know. But I do agree with you wholeheartedly that we need to have a policy. We need to have it written down, clear language. And I think that we can, if someone comes at us and says, well, why did you approve this? If we choose to, we can explain mitigating circumstances. And the fact that it is a very small ask and that it is, we felt like it was taking care of something that happened in the past that we wanted to clear up. All these other requests are not like that. So I think we can draw a line from point A to point B and justify the action. But then we are creating a policy that says we're not open for business for people to be buying up our capacity because we're just not going to do that.
Maybe I could help just kind of simplify this a little bit. Setting aside, you could make a simple financial decision here, right? Which I would kind of advise you to do. If your concern is precedence, let's just dispense with that right now. There is no precedence. You're not required. The city council has such broad authority to make decisions about we will do this and then we won't do it. And then we'll do it again and then we won't do it again. Now, is it fair? No, but you're not bound by outside of service boundary requests to be fair if you don't want to be. I know that sounds horrible as I say it, but it's the reality, right?
No, I love it.
So, but with that said, I get the point is we would like to have something very clear, so we're not making judgment decisions every time somebody comes and requests this, right? So to simplify it down, I would just say if what we've tried to represent to you as staff is that, do we need the funding to build phase one? The answer is no. Would additional funding for phase one be a horrible problem for us to have? No. That's it. I mean, to make it really simple. Hopefully that's somewhat helpful.
No, that's helpful. That's helpful. You understand what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Bill, you have any thoughts? Dan? Michael?
It comes down to a financial decision. I wish there was a way, to be honest with you. I thought about it a lot. I wish there was a way that we could legally, charge more, and maybe we can, for out of service area storage. I think that that is so big, the whole area, that we got a lot more really extra storage when 20 years goes by that we need. I think that permeability of the land is going to be entirely different. We're already seeing it. It's entirely different with lot sizes the way they are now. You know, stormwater. I'm talking about, we're building stormwater systems that were based on a geology and a lot size and a home that is different than it is today. And nobody's gone back to revalidate it. But so all I'm saying is this is a one-off. It's a one-off with a long-term resident without getting into anything else, shenanigans or whatever. You know, it doesn't hurt us and it helps it because it gets us some cash faster.
I want to add one thing that will help you a lot, I think, that I'm sorry wasn't in the staff report. It was an oversight on my part. When Bickford, for example, or the confines of this agreement, while they're not necessarily paying a larger proportionate share than project that builds in Lincoln, what they are paying that is different is that we, Travis just pinged me that we charge them, we charge a project in town a proportionate share for like phases 1 and 2. In Bickford's case, and I think it's plugged into the calculations here, they're actually paying a small proportionate share for phases 1, 2, and 3. So there is a little additional benefit. It's minuscule in the totality of how expensive like this whole project is, but you know, if you're looking for some reasonable justification, there is some there.
I'm
Okay.
good.
Okay, ready to vote? I need a motion before we can do that.
I'll move to adopt resolution 2024-093.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Let's go ahead.
Perfect,
and
thank
vote.
you. Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Andriotta,
Yes.
Councilmember Joyner,
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
and Mayor Carlskin.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Marcus.
Next item on the agenda is a very quick city manager report.
Yep, super quick. I only have 7 items. So I like to give a warning to city council and to the public that next meeting will be heavy. So don't bring your sleeping bags, but there's a lot on that agenda, really the next couple meetings. I won't speak to exactly what will be on each one, but in general, what you have to look forward to the next couple is that we have our next phase of rate adjustments being presented to the city council, albeit much smaller than our first year. We have the solar project. We've been moving along with our various financing options, and I think we're going to give you all 3 options, but we've landed on a preferred method that we think will deliver the project in a timely manner. We are just wrapping up this morning. We got through, I think we called about a 75% of the way through our budget update. So we'll have some very interesting information to share. Along those lines, we, not at the next couple meetings, but in June, we're still seeking a date, which is complex, but we will have a strategic planning session to update your plan. All of the department heads have gone through various ones that were assigned or they're involved with, so we can give status updates on, a lot of them we've cleared, and then some have a bit more work to get done. We're wrapping up our recommendations on the enterprise fleet management and lease options, which will be to you shortly. And in the next, in about the next 30 days, in fact, starting tomorrow night, I'm going to Planning Commission and then in all of our other boards and committees with the effective governance and code of conduct to workshop it with each one of those groups. And as council directed, they'll either, I'm going to make clear that we're not deducting anything out of the tenants. If they have things that they think would be added that are more specific to them, they can raise those and we'll think about, making it customized for each and every board. So it's actually kind of a lot of work because I'm going to do it twice. I'm going to give them the opportunity to hear the presentation and chew on it for a few weeks and then come back and we'll hopefully finalize it. So all of those different committees and boards will be working through that. And finally, that's it. That's all I have tonight. Thank you very much.
Okay, council initiated business.
I have one thing, and I'm going to apologize ahead of time because Sean just said our next couple of meetings are going to be really heavy. So I apologize for asking for another item to be put on the agenda. I would like for the council to hear a request for a portion of Highway 193. So if you have lived in the Sacramento area for any length of time, you would be familiar with a very well-known DJ named Joey Mitchell. And actually his real name was Joe Mendoza. Him and his wife Jeanette lived at 1450 Highway 193 for about 20 years. His parents or her parents built the house in the early 70s, and then they bought the house from them and they lived for 20 years. Back in the day when Lincoln Christian Life Center was probably the home church to about 10 or 15% of this town, everybody went out there. He was there. He served that church for many years. But he spent 50 years in radio in our area, being on crack radio, country, and then he was on K-Hits and a bunch of other things. And so the request came to me because he just passed away a couple months ago. And the request came to me because they lived out there for so long, because he is a Sacramento icon in the radio business, to dedicate or name part of 193 Joey Mitchell Memorial Highway. So it's a lot to think about. I know it's like, we don't do this kind of thing very often, but I would just like to put it on the agenda so we can have a conversation about it. And the family might possibly come and make the request. So it came to me as a request, and so I'm bringing it to you to put it on the agenda. So I personally think it would be really great to honor him, but that's up to the council to decide. So will my council members be okay with putting it, and if next meeting is too full, then maybe the next one, I don't know.
Fine with putting it on the agenda
Yeah.
for a conversation.
Yeah.
Those things are difficult,
They are, yeah.
right? And sometimes the way you handle it is you kind of unofficially
Yeah.
name it that.
Yeah.
But we've certainly set that precedent in the past. We've dedicated a portion of the bypass to Tom Cosgrove.
Yep.
So I'm open to the conversation.
Great.
If you remember that, and if
That is
It's
a
a-
state highway still.
that's a
so-
state highway and you have to go through the state,
Right.
and it took us almost a year and a half to do that. So,
But doesn't,
but there's a section 193 that is city
it
owned.
belongs to us, right?
So when that time comes, the kind of question I'm going to have is, does it present an issue for public safety response to have multiple names for a stretch of roadway? In the past, we've intentionally made sure that there was, this is going back 20, 25 years. So there was going to be the renaming of Highway 65 when it became ours again to Lincoln Boulevard. And what is now East Joyner Parkway was going to be East Lincoln Boulevard. And so the confusion, when people call and say, I have a fire at my house, I live on Lincoln. Now you have a problem. You have,
Right.
so that's the kind of question I would have
Right.
is will that
Right.
renaming of only a stretch
Well, and
present a problem?
I guess
And-
we could talk about
Yeah.
not actually renaming it, but just, we can talk through all that. Yeah, just anyway. Okay, but is that okay with you? If we put on the
I'm good with
agenda? Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate that. And that's all I have.
Any other council initiated business? go on to committee report. Any committee? report?
EDC.
And I already gave that one. I did. We met and I think I reported at the last council meeting. Didn't I?
No, we had a bye week and
Oh.
we just recently had an EDC meeting that Nita was our
Our
person of many hats.
talking about our EDC.
Yes, yes, yes,
Okay,
yes.
okay, yes, okay.
And I don't have it in front of me either, so.
I'm sorry, I am drawing a blank. What am I reporting on? Just what we talked about or, okay. Do you remember what we talked about? Yeah, thanks. We talked about several things. I'm sorry.
That's all right. I was tossing it to you because I don't have it in front of me
Yeah,
either.
sorry.
Yeah, I don't have the agenda in front of me either, but from my memory, we discussed the business grant program that Aaron is spearheading and that applications will be accepted by local businesses on June 1st.
Yes.
Erin has had a lot of interest in that program already, and she believes that as soon as the application opens, it is available now on our website, that she's going to receive more than sufficient number to award the funds that we have. We also talked about,
Signage.
yes, signage and a program to help boost our tourism to make it more visible. We provided some documentation to take to the international conference for retailers to help boost Lincoln's presence. And we did discuss signage as far as parking signs that came out of the recommendations from the report from the University of Davis. And I think that's all I have on the top of my
I
head.
think that was it too. And Aaron, great work across the board.
Yeah,
Thank you for
absolutely. Thank you, Nita, for saving us because
So I had two, just very quickly. The SACOG Transportation Committee, there was no action taken there that directly affects Lincoln. And then I also sit on the Regional Funding Round Group, which if you recall, has to deal with negotiations over Placer County being pulled into what used to be a 4-county funding round. Now it's Placer and El Dorado are being pulled in, and it will be a 6-county funding round. And so these are really negotiations over the fairness of that and making sure that those more heavily populated counties aren't getting an unfair share of those revenues. And so what's taken place there is we have tentative agreement on a framework moving forward that will then shape the rest of the discussions. I expect that to go before the board probably in June. And then those discussions will be ongoing over the next year or so before any final decisions are made. But it's progressing.
Yeah, I have, with the Sheridan Mac and the Lincoln Mac, with the county, they've been having to deal with the whole Brown Act thing with a lot of their subcommittees. And so they had mentioned that they were getting rid of all subcommittees for the Lincoln Rural Mac and the Sheridan Rural Mac. And because they really don't meet like they should, because there's not a lot to talk about, and they would have to do all the paperwork and the reporting and whatnot. And so no more subcommittees for these areas. Also, they're doing, Placer County's helping to clean up things and said that the city could participate in this, but it says, tired of those old tires in your yard? You can bring up to 9 tires, May 19th, 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. Placer County residents, free drop-off event, Sheridan Stewart Hall Community Hall, 6005 Camp Far West Road in Sheridan.
Ben, are they talking about disbanding the Max?
Oh, that was a misconception because there was talk about the disbanding the subcommittees. People were thinking, oh, shoot. And so there were several emails that went out, says, no, we're not doing that.
You have anything?
Yeah, well, this whole board meeting. Doing nothing.
Yeah.
And all the other meetings that I've attended. This meeting starts my committee meeting. You know, boom, 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 boom. Yeah. The only other committee meeting I've attended is LAFCO, and I am a member now, but I wasn't a member when I attended. And they are doing strategic planning, which is like all strategic planning, having no impact on Lincoln whatsoever. Okay? That's it.
That's it.
I think, any information on it? I was fortunate to attend Holly's graduation
Oh, yeah.
from Academy School. It was very inspirational. Her speech was excellent.
Thanks.
And
And the mayor brought me some very beautiful red roses, so it was very nice.
Yeah. figuring Scotch didn't work. didn't
Yeah.
it? Okay. I'm calling the meeting adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.